It's a new year, so it's time to re-explore my favorite films of all time. So today I'm going to give you my picks for my 20 favorite movies of all time. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comment section. Share your favorite movies of all time. Obviously, our lists are going to be wildly different from one another because we all pick favorites based off different criteria. As I go into this list, I'm not trying to impress you with my taste in movies. I'm not trying to pick the best movies of all time. These are the movies if I was stranded on a desert island with a solar-powered TV and Blu-ray player. These are the movies that I would want to have with me. One final thing before we get started. This year, I'm trying to do a lot more on my social media. So if you follow me over on Facebook or on Instagram, I'm gonna have some exclusive videos over there each week. A lot of behind the scenes footage, and I always do a bunch of stuff on my stories to kind of give you a day-to-day feel of what's happening kind of with my life. I'm also really good at answering my direct messages over there. If you're interested in kind of going deeper with Sean Chandler Talks About, follow me over on social media. With that said, let's get started. Kicking things off at number 20 is Jaws. Actually, I hadn't seen this movie until I met my wife. She told me it was her favorite movie of all time, and it occurred to me, I love Steven Spielberg movies, and I've never seen Jaws, so we watched it, and I instantly fell in love with it. It works on every level. It's a great character study about the character Brody. In fact, all the characters here are fantastic. It's a thriller. It actually has stakes inside of it. It's a movie willing to kill off a child. It can be funny when it needs to be funny. The score is memorable. This is the movie that took Spielberg from kind of this up-and-coming director doing like TV movies and made him the hottest director of the last 45 years, and kind of in certain ways invented the concept of a blockbuster, movies that just people were showing up in droves to see. For some reason, I didn't watch this one growing up. Once I did, I've loved it ever since. Number 19, Braveheart, one of the first R-rated Oscar contender movies that I went to go see in the theaters and absolutely fell in love with it. Once again, you have this epic story about our central character, William Wallace. It has all these big emotional elements about dying for things that you care about and fantastic war sequences inside of it. Another movie with a fantastic, memorable score, all leading up to kind of a climax inside of it that's not a big battle. It's tragic in the way that it plays out, but so emotionally resonant and powerful. This is one of those movies that I've watched so many times. Every single time, it gets me amped up. Number 18, Pulp Fiction. If you've watched my Quentin Tarantino ranking, you know that this is my very favorite Quentin Tarantino film. And for me, it was a very formative film when it comes to getting me to understand that movies aren't all just big blockbusters that follow this very specific, typical 3-act structure. I watched this movie, it breaks all the rules that I'd come to know about films, and I still absolutely loved it. You, of course, have the Quentin Tarantino dialogue that can be really funny at times. It feels like people actually having conversations. You have the great Quentin Tarantino characters inside of it, and of course, it's a movie told out of chronological order, in which kind of messes with you a little bit, and each of the stories works in and of itself, and then they tie together in ways that kind of complement one another. An incredibly influential film that kind of influenced a bunch of the other movies that were influential on me as a lover of cinema. So this is one I always go back to and have a fantastic time with. Next up, Predator. People ask me all the time, what movies scared you when you were a child? Movies have never really scared me all that much, but Predator, the first time I watched it, that was one that kind of got under my skin as I watched people getting skinned and freaked me out, and I did not sleep that night. Beyond that, you have just a movie that works excellently as an action film, as the action is shot incredibly well by John McTiernan. You have the horror, the thrills inside of it as these groups of soldiers are being stalked and you're not sure exactly what it is. You have the fantastic showdown between Arnold and our Predator in the final act of it as they duke it out. You have all the kind of memorable Arnold lines inside of it, as well as great lines from the other characters inside of it. But honestly, the thing that I can say is best about this film is it's one of the few movies that it's an Arnold Schwarzenegger starring film, but I don't think of it as an Arnold Schwarzenegger film. The film itself transcends his personality. Very few of his movies can do that. Even stuff like True Lies, I still think of it as a Arnold Schwarzenegger movie rather than a James Cameron film or a big action movie that's fantastic. But Predator, I just think of that as a great action sci-fi thriller. Number 16, The Matrix. The Wachowskis genre blender does so many things so well. You have the action shootout stuff of John Woo's 1980s and 90s action films. You have the martial arts of Yuen Wu Ping. You have kind of a lot of the design and stuff of anime that they'd seen. You have elements from the Terminator movies, all of it infused with philosophy, Christian theology, Western way of thinking, Eastern way of thinking, all blended together in a movie that somehow works. It takes a bunch of different flavors, throws them in the blender. It should taste disgusting, but it's not. They found a way to blend the tones, the styles, the ideas together so well and make something that works as a unique thing in and of itself, as well as a great homage to all the things that came before. Then we have Ghostbusters. Ghostbusters was such a part of my childhood because you had the animated show, The Real Ghostbusters, that I watched every Saturday morning and every other time I could find a rerun of it. And of course, I loved the original film that is just so funny. And it's not funny because of these big joke setups, even though you're in this big fantastical film. It's funny because of the script is so well written and these characters so odd in their nature that it just feels like organic setups for moments of levity and humor inside of it that work so well. There's a great mythology about these ghosts out there and why these professors decide to start this company. And then, of course, all the actors do a fantastic job. Memorable performances. Once again, so many iconic, great scenes inside of it, all while having sci-fi spectacle. It can make you laugh all at the same time. Number 14, Inception. Christopher Nolan's dream heist movie is such a unique film, from its concept to the fact that it incorporates these heist elements with action, the visuals inside of it, and that he did so many of them with practical effects rather than actually going with CGI or green screen elements in it. All of it makes for a movie that's so Christopher Nolan, so distinct, so memorable on so many different levels. And I love the script inside of it that by the time you get to the end of it, you're debating what actually happened because each of them makes sense, but the most important thing is our lead character Cobb's story has been resolved by the end. At number 13, The Avengers. My MCU representative for this list is going to be The Avengers. You might say Infinity War is the one that's number one in your MCU rankings. Right, but this is a desert island list. If I'm going to a desert island and I only get one MCU movie, I'm not going to pick the first half of the Infinity War Endgame double feature there. I'm going to go with the very rewatchable, the original Avengers that has so many excellent elements. The narrative itself, fairly straightforward in the way it plays out, but that provides so much room for the character interactions. And as I've said many times before, I think it has the best banter of all of the MCU films. It's Joss Whedon at his best playing around with these characters. And then the third act is just a dream come true as our heroes are all given these moments to do ridiculous things that probably shouldn't work when you're having Hulk pick up Loki and smack him on the ground and he's punching Thor in the face. That stuff shouldn't work. But for whatever reason, Joss Whedon found a way to pull it all together and make just such a pleasant movie. And while I'm working on my tan stranded on an island, I want something that brings joy into my life. And that's The Avengers. Then we have Warrior. This is a movie that anytime someone asks for a movie recommendation, what do I think is the most underappreciated movie of all time? I always answer Warrior. It's an MMA sports drama that came out back in 2011 that nobody watched it when it came out, so it kind of disappeared. And then it got this cult following because everybody that watched the movie loves it. It stars Tom Hardy, Joel Edgerton, and Nick Nolte as two brothers and their father, who are kind of torn apart, and the movie is their journey towards this martial arts or MMA tournament, and it is just fantastic. The first hour does a great job of setting up the characters, the conflict, the tension, everything that's on the line for them, all building towards this tournament, and then for the last hour straight of the movie, it is just non-stop payoff, the best sports payoff I've ever seen in any movie ever, and it just keeps delivering it over and over and over again. The performances are fantastic. I believe Nick Nolte was nominated for an Oscar for his role inside of this film, but I mean, you've got Tom Hardy, who's of course crazy good inside of it and crazy jacked inside of it. Joel Edgerton, of course, is always fantastic in movies. And this was the first movie that I saw Frank Grillo in, and the movie I kind of most identify him with as he's Joel Edgerton's trainer inside of it. If you haven't seen this movie, go do yourself a favor, go watch this movie. Since I recommended it in my best of the decade list, multiple people have watched it. Every single one of them has messaged me to say, hey man, thanks so much for the recommendation. Please go watch it. Number 11, Batman Begins. Batman is one of my top 2 favorite comic book characters of all time, and I absolutely love origin stories, and I absolutely love Christopher Nolan movies. Put that all together and you have like the perfect movie for me. Topping all of it off, of course, you have a fantastic cast. The movie that kind of took Christian Bale from being this person that everybody that knew about actors knew he was awesome to launching him to the A-list where everybody knew that he was awesome. You have Michael Caine inside of it, Morgan Freeman, Gary Oldman, just a fantastic cast, great action, and cool training sequences. You see Christopher Nolan using his normal bag of tricks, telling the story out of order. I just love this movie. This is the movie in the Dark Knight trilogy that I rewatched the most. It's the one that gets me the most amped up. I love it. Kicking off our top 10 is Rocky, the quintessential sports movie, the underdog story about the guy that just wanted his chance and he took it, he went for it. And all along the way, he found his self-respect and he found himself a girl as well. For me, Rocky Balboa is probably my favorite movie character of all time. Stallone's probably my favorite actor of all time. And this is the movie where he himself put it all on the line to get this movie made and to get to star in it. And so much about this film is so inspiring. The behind the scenes, the movie itself, the score is iconic. And it is the movie by which pretty much all sports movies have been measured ever since it came out over 40 years ago. Number 9, Superman the movie. The original superhero blockbuster film is the comic book movie that I grew up watching. This one and Superman 2 just were such a huge part of my childhood. My family had recorded the movies off of, like ABC Sunday Night Movies or something like that. And they actually had a whole bunch of like deleted scenes inside of it from that they just decided to cram into it to extend the runtime. So I grew up watching it on that VHS copy of it, running around in my Superman shirt with my a towel tied around my neck, wearing cowboy boots because I didn't understand, how it all worked. But jeans, cowboy boots, cape, shirt. That was my childhood. This movie means so much to me. And there's a lot of things about it that if you kind of grew up in the zeros, didn't grow up watching this movie, it seems ancient. The special effects look ridiculous. But so much about this movie is monumental for the genre as we know it, because Richard Donner decided to take the material seriously. The first 50 minutes is kind of this epic tale of the destruction of Krypton and Jonathan Kent raising Clark with these morals, and all leading to when the campier stuff starts once you actually get to Metropolis inside of it. Christopher Reeves is fantastic, does a great job of transforming between Superman, Clark Kent, and John Williams' score is one of the best of all time. So iconic, memorable, and just gets you pumped up and feeling heroic. Next up, Jurassic Park. Here, Steven Spielberg makes what I just think is kind of a magical film because it has all of the disaster movie that you want with dinosaurs eating people. It can be very funny at times, largely because of Jeff Goldblum, but it also kind of explores kind of the ideas behind science and what we're doing. And that kind of, I think, is a lot of the glue that brings the movie together, is that it has this great set of characters, each with a different worldview, all looking at this idea of dinosaurs being brought back from different perspectives, and all of them in their own ways kind of being wowed by what Hammond was able to do on this island, bringing them back. And the movie captures that magic so well, largely because of John Williams' score, and then also, of course, because Steven Spielberg is a master director, and the source material from Michael Crichton's book, also quite good. Put it together and you just get a fantastic sci-fi thriller with characters that you love and actual edge of your seat excitement. Number 7, Back to the Future. Robert Zemeckis' time travel comedy has one of the best scripts I have ever seen. It just does such a great job of paying attention to all of the little details inside it, whether you're talking about the name of the mall, the people that you meet inside of shops back in the 50s, the little details you hear about 1985. Everything is so well thought through. The characters are brought to life by these actors. It's one of these movies that people can't imagine anyone else playing any of these characters because they're so definitive inside of the roles, have such great chemistry with each other in the way it plays out. But also the other fun thing here is it's just a great concept for a movie. The idea of a present day high schooler going back in time to when their parents were in high school and just meeting each other is interesting inherently at any point in time. Put it all together when you have a fantastic script, perfect casting inside of it, and you just get a delightful film that's funny, it's exciting, and you just love to spend time in this world. Then we have Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. I grew up watching Star Trek, going to Star Trek conventions, and the movie that I think is the best of the bunch is Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan for a number of different reasons. One of the key elements here is that the movie is a continuation of an episode of the series Space Seed, and it tries to play that out. Not just that Khan came back and is wrathful, but the idea that Jim Kirk and the rest of the crew are getting older, facing the mistakes that they've made, the choices, and it interweaves all of that throughout the script. And so you have this film that's just rich with themes that resonate with you on so many different levels. If you've loved these characters, if you're a human that's aging and getting older, there's so many things to enjoy here. Also love the practical model work, space battles inside of it. This is one of my favorite space battles of all time, the third act inside of this film. And then you have an amazing score from James Horner. One of my favorite scores of all time is the one from this film. It's the best of Trek. It has the themes, it has the action, and the music is phenomenal. In fifth place is Aliens. There's two types of people in the world, people that prefer Alien and people that prefer Aliens, and I'm certainly in the category that prefers Aliens. I just absolutely love what James Cameron did, both with the mythology here, how he expanded kind of the style of the franchise, and of course what he did with the Ripley character and making her a much more maternal character by introducing the Newt character. From the very beginning, it starts ratcheting up the tension and the conflict inside of it, and it does not let up until the credits roll. It just keeps getting more and more intense. Like the movie Predator, this is one of those films that when I first watched it, freaked me out so much because it just kept getting so stressful as the movie went along inside of it. Another fantastic James Horner score here. Love what he did here, and a lot of the music in this started to appear in some of his other scores that he did elsewhere. But for me, this is a movie that every time I watch it, I'm amazed at how James Cameron was able to make a sequel that just expanded so well on what came before and was able to bring so much more emotion and excitement to it. Number 4, Star Wars: The Empire Strikes Back. This movie takes everything that we loved about the first movie, just takes it to the next level. The special effects are so much better. They were groundbreaking in the first film, and this one just kind of expands on all of it. Whether you're talking about the walkers, the asteroid field, just even the nature of Cloud City. There's this gorgeous shot of the Millennium Falcon flying behind a cloud. So many cool things. The characters have more depth. We're doing kind of this coming of age story with Luke and him training with Yoda. Another great, fantastic new character here. Han and Leia have a romance. His past is coming to haunt him. We get Lando thrown into the mix here. And for me, this is my favorite of John Williams' Star Wars scores. Just the music, whether it's Yoda and the Force, the way that asteroid chase is just amplified by the music inside of it, and these crescendos. This is the best of Star Wars, one of my favorite franchises of all time, and so then it's the one that I'm taking to that island. Real quick before I give you my top 3, remember to share your picks for your favorite movies of all time. Obviously, our lists are going to be wildly different. I didn't forget anything. This is my list of favorites that I would take to a desert island. Of course, you're going to have a different list, and I would love to see yours. Also, if you've enjoyed this, check out this playlist right up here. It's got a bunch of my other favorites lists, so you can kind of figure out my full taste in movies and different genres, things like that. If you've enjoyed this video, there's definitely something up there that you'll enjoy. In third place is Die Hard, the best straight action movie of all time, and all of it works because it has a masterfully crafted script where every little detail matters. Right out of the gate, we're having conversations with John McClane on a plane that set up plot details that are so important for how things play out throughout the rest of the film. Every time a character is introduced, there's a little detail that has some payoff later on inside of the film. Another thing that makes this movie so great is the characters are made not to be action movie characters, but feel like real people that just happen to be inside of this fantastical situation. John McClane doesn't have this big origin story. He's just a cop in the wrong place at the wrong time, or the right place at the right time, depending on who you are. And then you have Hans Gruber, for me, probably the best movie villain of all time, played to perfection by Alan Rickman. It's not that he has all these depths and layers and motivations. He's just such a charismatic guy that's just trying to do this big heist and knows how to interact with people just so wonderfully. Such a wonderful action movie villain. The lines are memorable. The action sequences pop and stand out from beginning to end. This is like the perfectly crafted action movie. Our runner-up is Raiders of the Lost Ark, the greatest adventure film of all time, where you have Indiana Jones tracking down the lost Ark of the Covenant, trying to battle Nazis all along the way, and always being in over his head, but being able to find a way to get out of the situations that he's put himself into. Everything about this movie, once again, is perfectly crafted, from the nature of the Indiana Jones character as kind of the perfect adventurer. He's intelligent, he's handsome, he's willing to step into action, and even though he's constantly getting into trouble, he can always, through his wits and his willingness to act, get out of the trouble that he is in. It can be funny when it needs to be, it can be dramatic when it needs to be, and it has some of the best action sequences of all time. The chase, big finale, final action sequence inside of it where he's being dragged behind the truck is absolutely fantastic, kind of classic, old school, real stunt work with guys putting themselves on the line to do exciting things, masterfully directed by Steven Spielberg and with John Williams' score accentuating everything that happens. Another phenomenal film from Steven Spielberg. But coming in at first place is Terminator 2 Judgment Day. Here, James Cameron gives Terminator the same treatment that he gave Alien, and he expands the genre, goes deeper in with the characters, and creates one of the best spectacle films of all time that also just happens to have a lot of emotion inside of it. The magic here, I think, is they found a way to kind of do a boy and his dog story with the Terminator franchise, where you have John Connor and the Terminator building this bond between the two of them while they go and shoot a bunch of people and battle an evil Terminator. It can be funny once again when it needs to be, with just these little lines set up so well by this scenario that's going on with the Terminator that's not allowed to terminate people. The action here is phenomenal. James Cameron is excellent with action, and here he was given a bonkers large budget to kind of do all this crazy stuff. This movie has everything that I love in films. It's got time travel, it's got a sense of humor, phenomenal action that's done practically, a great performance from Schwarzenegger, and it actually packs an emotional punch that can get the man tears as you go into those final moments of the film. This is a film I'm always in the mood to watch, and if I'm stranded on an island, the number one movie I've got to have is Terminator 2. If you've enjoyed this video and want more like it, remember to check out that playlist right over there that has some of my other favorites list. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies too much.